Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. This week in synagogue we will be reading Parshat Reeh, moving towards the middle of the book of Deuteronomy, as Moshe gives the advice to the people about how they are to behave when they get into the promised land. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to read a lot of mitzvot. In fact, this section of the Torah, Reeh and Shoftim and Kitavo and Kitetse, they are renowned for having the most mitzvot, the most legal material of the whole Torah. There has been, throughout Jewish history, criticism of this focus on mitzvot, this focus on very specific ways in which we are supposed to behave. A common indictment that has been made against Judaism for thousands of years has been that we're so caught up in the law, we're so caught up in the details and the legalism that maybe we miss the greater point. For example, to be, it's not so much that I do this or I do that, but just to be good to people and to be nice and to do the right thing. What's missed in this critique is that sometimes it's the law that helps us understand, it's the mitzvot that help us understand what is the right thing. I believe we all have a little bit of God's voice inside of us coming from our neshama telling us the difference between right and wrong, and yet it's not so hard to get led astray. So what do I mean? So for example, in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 8, we are given the mitzvah, the commandment, that we have to not only help our neighbor if they are destitute, if they don't have money. Not only that, but we're supposed to do it with a full heart. In the words of the Torah, it says, Ki yeh becha evyon me'achad achecha be'achad she'arecha be'artzecha. Right? If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kin, in any of your settlements, in the settlements that the Lord your God, in the land that the Lord your God is giving to you. This is a poor person in Israel. When you get there, te'ametz et levavcha. Do not harden your heart. Lo te'ametz et levavcha. Do not harden your heart. Velo tikpot et yadecha. Do not close your hand, shut your hand. Me'achecha havyon, to your needy kinsman. Ki patoach tiftach et yadecha lo. Rather, you will surely open your hand to them, right, and give them what they need. No, not exactly. Right? It says vehe'avet ta'avitenu di machsoro asher yachsar lo. No, you shall open your hand to him and lend him. Surely lend them whatever is sufficient to meet the need. Now, someone might criticize this and say, you have to lend them. Why are you lending them? Why don't you just give it to them? That's what an open heart would do. That, I get it. That is the heartstrings pulling us along a path. But the question is simply giving tzedakah, simply giving money to someone who needs it, better, or is lending it? Now remember, this would be an interest-free loan, because we already learned in Parshat Mishpatim, in the book of Exodus, that we don't lend on interest. So is it better to give to them, or is it better to lend it to them with the expectation that they'll pay back? Now, listening to our hearts, we say, just give it to them. That's, especially if you have it, if you don't need it. I mean, as much as we don't need, we have over what would be sufficient for us to live the lives we want to live. Why wouldn't you just give it to them? But this is the Torah, in fact, being sensitive to the emotions, not of the giver, but to the receiver. Because ultimately, to take might be humiliating for them. But to take on a loan says that I believe you will one day be capable of paying this back. It is less of a judgment on the person. And the rabbis taught it is better to lend than it is to give. Also, why? So many reasons. One, it gives the person the expectation. I see in you someone who will be able to repay this loan. It also keeps someone keeps someone from being habituating to taking, to living off tzedakah, which happens, but instead gives them motivation to keep trying to pull themselves out of this rut that they are in. So while the heart might tell us, oh, I want to be satisfied by just giving. Oh, look how nice I am. Look how good I am. Not in an egotistical way, but in a genuine way. When we put some parameters around that from our seichel, from our knowledge, from our thoughtfulness, and put ourselves in the place of the receiver, recognize actually it's better not to just give, but it's better to lend for the sake of that person. This kind of an attitude actually leads to a very beautiful comment by the Baal Shem Tov, the famous founder of Hasidic Judaism. He says, in commenting on this verse, right, that actually, when we lend to the poor person should say to themselves, to this person who receives, they can say, I'm receiving tzedakah, therefore I am giving this charitable person or this lending person the opportunity to do a mitzvah. So ultimately, what a nice thing it is for me to give this person the opportunity to help me so that they can fulfill this mitzvah in the Torah of giving tzedakah. And ultimately, the Baal Shem Tov says this person living in poverty can feel good in that they are fulfilling an important role, important need. Not only that, but the Baal Shem Tov, in a beautiful twist of reverse psychology, goes on to say that, in fact, the receiver is even greater than the giver, because the giver has limited resources and can only give to so many people, can only do that mitzvah so many times. But the receiver, the one who is taking tzedakah, the one who is being lent to, can go to an endless number of people to ask and to give that opportunity to give tzedakah. And therefore, how good it is, says the Baal Shem Tov, to be someone who is in the position of receiving tzedakah. Again, it's latching onto this sensitivity. Yes, the mitzvot must be undergirded by emotion. It takes heart, right? You open your heart and open your hand to lend to the person. But the fact that it's lending reminds us that we can't only listen to our heart, that sometimes following our heart, following what our conscience tells us is the right thing, can lead to unintended consequences and end up doing more harm than good. No, in fact, when we want to follow our heart, it's important to put these parameters around it, to have guidelines around it that come from the halakha, that come from Jewish law and Jewish practice, to help remind us that the world is bigger than what we can see, that there's a lot going on outside of ourselves. The halakha, the teachings of the Torah, the wisdom of Moshe, our teacher, the wisdom of the Baal Shem Tov, all of it is to remind us to step outside ourselves, to be humble, to look towards what is going on beyond the way I feel and what I need in order to serve this higher purpose, this greater purpose. That ultimately is what Moshe is trying to give the people as they are going into the promised land. It's the same kind of guidance that we could use as we have so many choices to make, so much focus on the self in the culture in which we live. These mitzvot, Jewish practice, a Jewish lifestyle, can help us to see a little bit more clearly what's going on around us, and hopefully to do good, not only for ourselves, not only for our family, not only for our immediate needs, but for the entire olam, the entire world, doing tikkun olam, and hopefully making it better for everyone. Wish you a Shabbat Shalom.